"Don't move," the little boy said, steady as a lifeguard. "You're about to lose your birthday." The wind slammed the cafe door so hard it rattled the windows. The power flickered. Claire Whitmore's cupcake, one tiny candle glowing like a stubborn star, skidded across the table and tipped. The plate started to slide toward the edge. A boy in a yellow raincoat lunged and caught it with both hands. The candle sputtered but stayed lit. His father was a step behind him, hair-damp jacket dripping from the storm. He put a hand on the boy's shoulder. "Noah," he said, a warning softened by a smile. "Ask before you rescue a stranger's cake." The boy looked up at Claire with grave, 6-year-old seriousness. "May I save your birthday?" Claire blinked. She didn't recognize her voice when it returned. "Yes, please." Noah eased the plate back to safety, then pressed the candle upright with the careful precision of a surgeon. He glanced at his father, seeking approval. The man, broad-shouldered, work-calloused hands, gave a little nod. "Thanks," Claire said. It came out like a confession. "Storm's showing off today," the man said, a quick glance at the swaying sign outside Harbor Light Cafe. "You okay?" "I'm fine," Claire said automatically. The chair beneath her hummed quietly when she adjusted. The metal footrests shivered each time the front door banged open, letting in another breath of rain. Noah climbed onto the opposite chair without asking, chin on his fists, fascinated by the single candle. "Do you make a wish?" he asked. "Sometimes," Claire said. "Sometimes it's safer not to." He frowned, like that was a puzzle he could solve later. The man set his jacket on the back of the chair, wrung the water from his hair with his fingers, then offered a hand. "Jack," he said. "This is my son, Noah." Claire. Her hand disappeared in his warm, sure the kind of handshake that didn't try to prove anything. "Do you two make a habit of dramatic entrances?" "Only on Tuesdays," Noah said. "And on any day with thunder." Jack tilted his head toward the window. "Power might cut." "Mind if we share the table until it calms down? We'll be out of your way." "It's your storm," Claire said, gesturing to the empty chairs. "It's winning." The cafe had thinned as the sky darkened. Elena, behind the counter, silver-streaked hair in a messy bun, sleeves rolled to her elbows, watched them with that soft, knowing look of people who fed entire neighborhoods through every season of their lives. Jack slid into the seat beside Noah. If he noticed the chair Claire sat in, sleek, matte black, built for speed and independence, he didn't show it. He only took a napkin and gently dried the water that had splashed onto the table. "You keeping the candle?" he asked. "It seems stubborn," Claire said. "Stubborn candles make the best wishes." Noah leaned closer, whispered, "You can tell me your wish. I don't count." "Then it wouldn't work," Claire whispered back. He accepted this with a sage nod. Outside, the sky cracked open. Rain came slantwise. Elena arrived with 3 mugs that breathed steam into the cold room. "House policy," she said. "Storm coffee is free if you're sitting near the windows. Risk pay." "Generous," Jack said. "Practical," Elena replied. "Keeps people from bolting into traffic." Claire wrapped her hands around the mug. Heat gathered in her palms like courage. She caught Elena's eye. The woman smiled. There was recognition there of the solitary woman by the window, same time last year, and the year before that, but no pity. Elena knew better than to serve pity. So, Jack said easy, unintrusive, "What does a person do on a birthday in a storm?" Claire blew on her coffee. "Apparently she hires a small rescue team." Noah sat taller, chest proud. "We work for tips, cake slices only." "Noted." Claire looked at Jack. "You from here?" "Close enough," he said. "Workshop is 15 minutes up the road. We build things, tables, cribs, the occasional boat shelf when I'm showing off." "Elena's counter," Noah added. "Dad fixed it when the corner stopped being brave." Claire's gaze drifted to the counter's edge. She touched the wood with her eyes. The grain was a river, the corner seamless. "You made that?" Jack shrugged. "I listened to the wood until it told me what it wanted." "That's a line," Claire said, surprised pleasure warming the words. "It's also true." His eyes had a maker's patience, the kind that sees the shape inside the rough. "Do you have a line?" Noah asked Claire. A line she repeated, like something you say that makes people go, "Whoa," and then think about it all day. "Dad has a bunch. I'm collecting them." Claire considered. She hadn't collected anything lately except reasons not to be disappointed. "I used to," she said finally. "I used to say, 'Don't fight the water. Learn how it holds you.'" Noah's eyebrows shot up. "That's good," he said solemnly. "That's whoa." Jack watched her interest unforced. "Swimmer?" he asked. Was Claire said and blew out the candle before the storm could. The thin smoke curled like a small private prayer. Silence found the table, not heavy, not awkward. Just the kind of pause that lets truth gather its breath. Claire traced the rim of her cup. She didn't owe these strangers anything. And yet, it's hard to celebrate alone, Jack said quietly, as if he'd found her thought and put it on the table for her to examine without shame. She almost smiled. "Is that another one of your lines?" "It's a fact," he said. Facts are friendly. Lightning stitched the sky. The cafe dimmed. The lights steadied. Elena flipped a breaker in the back with the confidence of a ship captain. Noah raised a hand like a student. "Can we sing?" he asked Elena, who raised a brow that said, "In my cafe, goldfish sing if they want to." But softly he promised already, turning to Claire. I might be a little creative." Creatives encouraged, Elena called. Noah cleared his throat, serious as a choir boy. Jack's baritone joined, steadying Noah's unpredictable melody. It wasn't a performance. It was a small, off-key offering. Claire didn't know what to do with the ache blooming behind her ribs, so she did nothing. She let it bloom. "Make a second wish," Noah whispered at the end. "For backup." Greedy, Claire said, but her eyes stung. The door banged again. A man in a soaked baseball cap stomped in, shook himself like a retriever, and shouted orders at a phone like it owed him money. Elena shot him a look that said, "Language." He mouthed, "Sorry," and slunk to the far table. The world rushed back, the clatter of cups, the hiss of the espresso machine, the storm arguing with the town. Jack held out a fork. "Permission to commit cupcake." Claire laughed, a sound even she hadn't heard in a while. Permission granted. They ate. They talked in those safe circles strangers choose, at first whether local high school teams the town's love-hate romance with the sea. Noah explained the hierarchy of his favorite dinosaurs. Jack listened to both of them with the same respect. "Your turn," Claire said when Noah paused for breath. "Any birthdays we should be saving today," Noah glanced at Jack. Something passed between them, an entire conversation in a heartbeat. Jack's mouth lifted at one corner. "Someone we love," he said. "Every year we come here and tell a story about her. Sounds like a good tradition." "It is," he said. "Traditions are how we carry people without dropping them." Another line that felt like truth. Claire tucked it away before she could stop herself. Outside, a siren wailed, then faded. The storm rearranged the clouds. Elena slid a small plate onto the table. 2 sugar cookies shaped like boats. On the house, she set her eyes soft on Claire. "For navigating." Claire lifted one, studied the scalloped icing. "What if I'm not very good at it?" she asked. The question wasn't about cookies. "Then you do what boats do," Elena said. "You keep pointing your bow toward home even if you zigzag to get there." Noah bit his cookie stern. "I zigzag all the time," he said proudly. "Dad says it's called course correction, and it's not a mistake. It's science." "Your dad seems to have a line for everything," Claire said. "Only the important parts." Jack replied, a little self-mockery in it. The wind eased by degrees. People started checking their phones. A few stood peered out, decided they could make a dash for their cars without being baptized by rain. Jack glanced at the door, then back at Claire. "We can walk you to your car," he offered, not assuming, not pushing. "I don't have one today," Claire said. "I needed..." The walk. She let the word sit, allowed him to hear what it meant for her. Walk. Jack nodded. "Then we'll sit until the sidewalk stopped trying to swim." Noah pointed at Claire's cupcake. "You didn't tell us your wish," he said. I told you, she said. It won't work if I do. Maybe it already did, he said simply. Sometimes wishes sneak in before you say them out loud. Jack let out a breath that might have been a laugh. He's 6, he said. He thinks he's 80. I like 80, Noah said. 80-year-olds say what they mean. Claire swallowed around the lump in her throat. I like 80 too. The rain thinned to a steady whisper. The cafe brightened by an inch. Somewhere deep in the building, the heater kicked on with a reassuring thump. Life kept happening, which was its own kind of miracle. Jack checked his watch and stood to refill their water glasses. Claire watched his hands. They were beautiful in the way useful things are nicked, scarred engineers of second chances. He returned, and she surprised herself. Jack, she said, then stopped. She didn't invite people in. She was the fortress and the moat and the drawbridge raised. He waited patient. Thank you, she said finally, for treating a stranger like she wasn't. He nodded once. You didn't feel like a stranger. Noah tapped the table twice. An excited little drum. Dad says some people are familiar the first time you meet them, he informed her, like a song you forgot you knew. Claire's smile wobbled. Your dad says a lot of good things. Not all at once, Jack said, or he'd run out. The storm had one last grumble as if dissatisfied with its loss. Then the sky lightened in that tentative after-the-argument way. People put on their coats, chairs scraped. The cafe began its slow return to ordinary. Looks like our window's closing, Jack said. We should let Elena reset before the crowd sneaks back in. Elena snorted. You 3 can take root, she said, but her eyes slid to the door where a figure had paused a sleek coat umbrella. Impatience telegraphed in the set of his jaw. He scanned the room once dismissive, then moved on. He didn't see Claire. Jack followed Claire's gaze to the window. Friend, he asked. Something like that, Claire said, and her voice had changed thinner now the way it did when the outside world remembered her. Jack didn't pry. He slid the plate toward Noah. One more bite for the road. Noah obeyed cheerfully. Then he fished in his pocket and placed a sticker crooked dinosaur-shaped on the table in front of Claire. For luck, he said. Luck likes to be told where to go. I'll keep that in mind, Claire said, and tucked the sticker into her wallet like it mattered. They stood. The power held. The bell over the door chimed as someone left, and the cold lifted its head to look in. Jack pulled on his jacket, then hesitated. We're usually here on Tuesdays, he said casually, the way you leave a porch light on without announcing it. Storm or no storm? Claire's hand hovered over the cupcake plate, then returned to the wheel of her chair. Noted, she said. See you. Claire, Noah chirped. See you, Noah, she replied. Thank you for saving my birthday. Outside, the rain tapered to mist. Jack pushed the door open for his son, then looked back. For a heartbeat, Claire met his eyes. There were whole rooms behind them, locked and dusty, yes, but a few windows were cracked. The bell chimed once more. The door swung shut. Claire sat a moment longer, the candle wick a thin curl of black. Elena leaned on the counter. You going to sit here waiting for the next storm? She asked, gentle but not indulgent. Or are you going to make your own weather? Claire brushed a crumb from the plate. Maybe, she said, and surprised herself with the word. Maybe I'll learn to carry an umbrella. Good start, Elena said. Umbrellas are just portable courage. Claire turned the chair toward the door. The motors hummed. The world beyond the glass was washed clean and waiting. On her way out, she glanced at the corner of the counter, the one that had stopped being brave and been mended. She touched it with her fingertips. It felt like a promise a person could keep. The storm wasn't just weather anymore. It was a room everyone had to share. Outside Main Street hissed beneath the downpour, headlights blurred into streaks. Gulls wheeled low like scraps of torn paper. Inside, harbor light, glass, fogged with breath and coffee steam people clustered in islands around their tables, speaking softer than usual, as if thunder had a right to the loud parts. Claire sat where she had now with the candle extinguished and tucked into a napkin like a secret. Jack and Noah had returned with a tray, 2 bowls of soup Elena had pressed on them. You can argue with me, but I won't listen, and a plate piled with soda crackers that looked like tiny practical promises. Consider this a storm truce, Jack said, setting the bowl before her. No one leaves hungry. Claire smiled. Is that a rule from the wood shop? It's a rule from the kitchen table, he said. Best government I've ever known. Noah dunked a cracker with scientific precision. Dad says soup is a hug you can eat. Elena called from behind the counter without looking up. Your dad has more proverbs than the old. She caught herself, rolled her eyes skyward. Then a librarian. Jack lifted his spoon like a toast. To librarians, he said. And to people who look at storms and decide to feed them. They ate, and the quiet between them was the good kind, the kind that says no one's rushing you out of your own life. On the opposite wall, a framed black-and-white photograph of Harbor Light in the 1970s watched them with grainy patience. Elena's mother on the stoop apron, tied hair in a scarf, a line of fishermen waiting for pie. Noah followed Claire's gaze. That's Miss Elena when she's a kid, he announced with authority. Elena laughed from the register. That's my mama, she corrected. Who could tell me to stop sulking in 3 languages in one look? She taught you the free in a storm rule, Jack asked. She taught me the people come first rule, Elena said. Storm just gives me an excuse. Claire let the spoon rest. She wasn't used to being included in the choreography to people who assumed her place at the table instead of the margin. She studied Jack's hands as he warmed them around his bowl. His knuckles were scuffed, a thin white scar angled across the base of his thumb. Hands that had measured twice and cut once. Hands that believed in second passes. What kind of wood do you like best? She asked, surprised at herself. The question, simple as it was, felt like opening a window. Whatever tells the truth, he said. Cherry's honest, maple's patient. Oak is a stubborn old man who gets soft when you listen to him. Is there wood that lies? Claire tilted her head. Only when you pretend it's something it isn't, he said. But that's not a wood problem. That's a people problem. Noah nodded sagely. We don't pretend at our house, he told Claire. Dad says pretending is for costumes, not feelings. Your dad says a lot of things worth writing down, she said. Jack shrugged, uncomfortable with the compliment. Talking's cheaper than showing, he said. I try to let the work do the heavy lifting. Something in that landed softly and deep. Claire felt the line find purchase in a place words usually fell through. The bell over the door clanged twice. Gust, then a couple arguing in whispers about whether a storm counts as an omen, it counts as wet, Elena advised, handing over napkins. The lights flickered again. A few phones lit up faces with that blue ghost glow. Tell me your Tuesday story, Claire said to Noah, leaning forward. He brightened immediately. We come here and say one thing we remember about my mom, he said, counting on his fingers. Like her pancakes were always circles, never ovals. And she thought my middle name should be Brave. But then Dad said that's like making me do homework for the rest of my life. Jack grinned. We compromised with James. Brave is earned, not issued. Claire's throat caught. She took a sip to cover it. Do you remember her? She asked Noah, gently. I remember the stories, he said, and it didn't sound sad. Stories are like stepping stones so you don't fall in the river. That's exactly right, Claire said. She placed her palm on the tabletop, feeling the faint vibration of rain on glass, the living drum of it. I used to swim, she added, a simple offering laid out like bread. Jack looked at her, not prying. What kind of swimmer? He asked. The kind who learned to breathe on the third stroke and count tiles when the ceiling didn't make sense, she said. She kept her eyes on the wood grain. The kind who used to think water was the only thing that loved her back. Noah whispered, That's a good line, and reached for a cracker. Jack's voice was steady. The water still loves you, he said. It's patient like maple. Claire's laugh was quick, surprised. You can't talk to water like you talk to wood. You can, if you've learned to listen, he said, and the sentence hung between them like a rope you could trust. A sharp crack split the sky. The lights blinked out. Gasps gusted around the cafe, then hush. In the dim phones came up little lighthouses. Elena's voice floated from the back. "Don't panic, darlings. Harbor Light sails better in the dark than most places do in the sun." Jack's hand moved a smooth, unstartled shape, and a small flashlight winked on from his jacket pocket, its beam gentle. He set it upright on the table, the cone of light making a soft tent over the bowls and their faces. Noah leaned into the glow, delighted. "Dad carries everything. He says pockets are for preparedness, not crumbs. I say pockets are for money." "I can't see," Elena muttered, bumping a drawer. "Someone remind me to put the good batteries on the shopping list." Claire watched the yellowed circle of light transform the storm into a background actor. It felt suddenly like camping in a backyard safe, conspiratorial, a small rebellion against panic. Jack turned the beam away from Claire's eyes without making a production of it. "You okay?" he asked again, just as he had earlier. Only now it meant in the dark, in the noise, in the way a sudden blackout can tip a body into somewhere it didn't expect to go. "I'm okay," she said, and realized she meant it. Her chair hummed softly beneath her like a cat. She adjusted the joystick in her palm, a habitual check-in. The battery read full. Everything worked. "Sometimes the lights go out," Noah said, confidentially. "It's fine. We still know where the chairs are," Claire laughed. "That's unreasonably comforting." "Comfort should be unreasonable," Jack said. "Otherwise it's just furniture." The power flicked back hesitant as a child peeking around a door, then stayed. A rustle of relieved conversation swept through the room. Elena emerged triumphantly from the back with a candle on a saucer. "In case electricity gets bored again," she said, setting it near their flashlight. "Redundancy is next to godly to good planning." Claire looked at the small flame and felt something like permission. Claire Elena's voice softened on her name. "You were here once. Years ago, with your mom." Not a question a memory offered like a hand on a shoulder. "You sat in this same spot when the rain came sideways." Claire's breath left in a small, "Oh." The photograph on the wall, the apron, the line of fishermen. "You have a good memory," she said. "I have a long counter," Elena said. "It keeps people's moments from slipping off the edge." Claire swallowed. Her mother had loved small places that felt like big hearts. She'd said it often in a voice that smelled like lemon and sea salt. Some rooms are built to keep you dry. Some rooms are built to keep you. Jack didn't fill the silence. He let it live. Noah tapped a rhythm with his spoon and then, sensing something he couldn't name but understood, set the spoon down and folded his hands. "You ever need a quiet?" Jack said after a moment. "My shop's good at it. Wood doesn't like yelling." Elena clucked. "Wood forgives same as people, but it prefers gentle." Claire turned the candle with her fingertips, soft heat like a pulse. "Maybe I'll see your shop," she heard herself say. "If you're not overwhelmed with saving furniture in distress, we can always save one more corner that's forgotten how to be brave," Jack said. His smile wasn't salesman slick, it was simply true. Thunder withdrew a little, muttering. The rain shaped itself into smaller, steadier lines. People stood, shook out umbrellas, offered the communal weather verdict. "Looks like it's letting up." Noah slid off his chair, suddenly. Kinetic. "We have to go before the puddles become oceans," he announced. "I promised my socks I wouldn't betray them." Jack stood shrugging into his jacket. He took the flashlight, clicked it off, then hesitated. "We'll be around on Tuesday," he said in that porch-light way again. "But you don't need Tuesday." Claire tucked the napkin-wrapped candle into the pocket of her coat. "Maybe I'll try." "Monday," she said. "Bold," he said, amused. "Mondays don't see many heroes. Then they won't see me coming." Noah gave a solemn thumbs up. Sneaky hero, he approved. At the door, Jack paused, hand on the handle. He turned back, phrase gentle as the rain. "One more thing," he said. "If the world tries to rush you, don't let it. The right stuff is built on patient time." She didn't trust her voice, so she nodded. Noted, she managed. "I'll try to be." "Maple. Maple suits you," he said, and then the bell chimed and the cold leaned in and they were gone, a father and a boy pushing into a rinsed street. Claire sat watching the door swing shut, the last drop shake from the awning like a final applause. She could feel the shape of their absence as clearly as she'd felt their presence, like a weight removed after you've grown used to carrying it. Elena collected the empty bowls, then placed something on the table without comment, a business card, plain white embossed with a small outline of a tree and the words Rourke & Son Workshop. On the back, in a hand that didn't apologize for existing, a pencil note: Tuesday, always. But any day is fine. Claire turned the card with her thumb. Through the window, the street shone like a new idea. "You going to wait for next Tuesday?" Elena asked. Not looking up, rinsing bowls, as if it were any ordinary afternoon. Claire slid the card into her wallet beside Noah's dinosaur sticker. "I might try a different day," she said slowly. "Maybe the day that starts with now." Elena's smile found the window first, then Claire. "Best one," she said. "Doesn't require reservations." When Claire finally headed out, the chair's motor purred steady as a vow. The sidewalks had stopped trying to swim. She lifted her face to the damp air, not to measure the weather, but to memorize the feeling of being held by a room when the sky forgot how. Across the street, the harbor sipped the rain. A gull shouted something like laughter. Claire touched the pocket where the candle warmed against her palm and thought, if water can carry the weight of a ship, maybe it can carry the weight of a name I haven't learned to say out loud yet. She didn't say it. She let the thought float beside her as she rolled toward home. A small boat keeping pace, proving that sometimes shelter isn't a roof, it's a voice at your table that says, stay as long as you need, we'll keep the soup warm. Claire awoke before the city did, the penthouse draped in that pale blue light that makes everything look like a memory. Rain had stopped in the night, but the glass still held its fingerprints. She sat at the kitchen island with a mug of tea, gone lukewarm, staring at the condensation as if it might answer a question she hadn't yet asked. Her father's voice broke the quiet through the intercom, not in person. "Claire, I've moved the board call to 9. We'll do a quick check-in before then." It wasn't a request. She pressed the button. "It's not a good morning for a check-in, Dad. It's 10 minutes, Walter Whitmore said, as if 10 minutes was a kindness. Then you can have the rest of the day for whatever you're doing lately, whatever I'm doing lately." The words scraped. "We'll see," she murmured, but the channel had already gone silent. She turned the chair toward the floor-to-ceiling windows. Beyond them, Elliott Bay was a sheet of hammered silver. Somewhere out there, gulls screamed over scraps, fishing boats crawled home. Claire imagined water on her skin, cold, honest, uncomplicated. And then, without meaning to, she was back there. The starter's pistol cracked. She sliced forward, counting tiles, feeling the clean catch and pull of each stroke. Breath on the third. The turn, a perfect tumble into the wall. The world narrowed to rhythm, muscle, heartbeat. She was ahead. She knew it when the scream of tires tore through the image. Her body remembered the weightless second before impact. The scent of burnt rubber. Then nothing but black, and the echo of her own name shouted from somewhere she couldn't answer. She blinked and the window glass cleared back into the present. Claire's phone buzzed, an unknown number. She almost ignored it, then heard a boy's voice in her head. Maybe the wish already worked. She opened the message. A photo. The harbor light counter bathed in afternoon sun. Underneath, in tidy block letters, we fixed the squeaky hinge. Tuesday's safe again. No signature, but she didn't need one. Miles away, Jack Rourke was bent over a cedar plank in his workshop. The air was thick with sawdust and the clean bite of cut wood. Light poured in through the big roll-up door, catching the suspended motes like slow snow. Noah sat cross-legged on the workbench, sketching a stegosaurus wearing rain boots. "Dad," he said without looking up, "are we going to see her again?" Jack brushed shavings from the board. "Maybe. That's up to her." She smiled. "Different," Noah said. "Not the I'm being polite smile, the real one." Jack's mouth curved just enough to count. "Real ones are rare." Noah leaned closer to his drawing. "We should help her keep it." Jack didn't answer right away. He planed the cedar edge, the tool, whispering. Sometimes, kiddo, the best help is to let people walk in on their own. She doesn't walk, Noah said plainly. Jack looked up, caught the innocent weight of it. Then, maybe the best help is to make sure the road's clear. That Saturday, the road cleared. Claire rolled through the open doors of Rourke & Son workshop, the smell of cut pine and varnish wrapping around her like a welcome she didn't know she'd been waiting for. Noah spotted her first. "You came." He ran over his rain boots mismatched and held out a sheet of paper. "I made this for you. It's us at the cafe, but the candle's a rocket ship." She studied the crooked rocket with its smoke trail of confetti. "I love it," she said. "That's a much better candle." Jack emerged from behind a half-built table. "Didn't expect you on a Saturday. I wanted to see where corners remember how to be brave," she said, the corners of her own mouth daring a smile. He wiped his hands on a rag. "Come on, then." He led her past workbenches crowded with chisels and clamps, each surface a small country of projects mid-journey. "This is cherry," he said, tapping a rich reddish slab. "Stubborn, but it warms if you earn its trust." She ran her fingers along the grain. "Like people." Jack's eyes flickered toward her. Exactly like people. At the back, he showed her the cradle of an unfinished rocking chair. Maple, patient, doesn't mind waiting to be what it's meant to be. Claire traced the smooth curve of an armrest. "It's steady." "Steady's underrated," Jack said. "Everybody wants spectacular until spectacular lets them down." She looked up at him. "And you, I want honest." He shrugged. "Honest lasts longer." There was a stillness then, the kind that wasn't empty but full of sawdust in the air of words better left to sit a little longer. Later, sitting on an upturned crate while Jack and Noah worked, Claire found herself telling them about her first swim meet at 12. How she'd been terrified until her coach said, "Water doesn't judge the shape of you. It only mirrors the way you move." Noah's brow furrowed. "So, you and the water were friends?" "We were," she said softly. "We still are, maybe. We just don't visit as often." Jack glanced at her, the look quick but not missing a thing. "Friends wait," he said. When she left that afternoon, the air was golden with late sun. Jack walked her to the door. "You know, he said maple takes a long time to reach its full strength. People rush it, but they just end up with something that breaks too soon." She met his eyes. "Are we still talking about wood?" His smile was small wry. "Maybe not." Noah waved from inside. "See you Tuesday, or Monday, or both." Claire rolled out into the street, the sound of saws and laughter trailing her like a tide going out. She didn't realize until she reached the corner that she was still smiling, the real smile. And somewhere behind her in a shop that smelled of cedar and new beginnings, a man watched her go and thought about roads and how some you build and some you clear, and some you simply wait beside until someone's ready to travel them. The rain had taken a day off, leaving the harbor glittering under a pale winter sun. Claire found herself rolling down a narrow side street she'd never noticed before. The air smelled of salt and sawdust, a pairing she didn't realize she missed until now. She'd been thinking about the workshop ever since she'd left it the other day. Not the way you think of a store you might visit again, but the way you think of a place that has already claimed a corner of you without permission. Jack was outside, bent over a plank on two sawhorses, a pencil behind one ear. Noah sat on the curb with a box of chalk mapping out a crooked racetrack for toy cars. Both looked up at the same time. "You came back?" Noah said, as if this was the natural order of things. "Seems like," Claire replied. Jack straightened brushed sawdust from his shirt. "I was just thinking about calling you." Why, she asked. He gestured toward the open door. "Thought you might want to see something that isn't finished yet." Claire tilted her head. "Why show me something unfinished?" "Because that's when it's honest," Jack said. "Before the Polish. Before it pretends to be perfect." Inside the workshop was warmer than she remembered, the afternoon light spilling in wide bars across the floor. Each workbench was a story in progress, half-carved legs, stacks of sandpaper jars of screws like captured constellations. This one, Jack said, stopping beside a tall frame. "Maple. Going to be a dining table for a family with too many kids." Claire ran her fingers along the edge. "It's smooth." "Not yet," he said. "Smooth is a finish. This is just patient." She smiled. Patience good. Patient lasts. Jack watched her, and there was something in his gaze that said he heard more than she said. You know what I like about wood? That it listens. That it doesn't lie, he corrected gently. You press too hard, you see it. You cut wrong, it won't forget, but it will let you try again. Claire looked at the grain under her hand. People should be more like that. Some are, he said. You just have to find them. They moved to the back of the shop where a low bench held smaller projects. Noah was here hammering nails into a scrap piece with serious precision. This is going to be a shelf for your books, he announced. My books? Dad says you probably read a lot, Noah explained. So I'm making one strong enough to hold heavy things. Claire laughed softly. That's thoughtful. It's engineering, he corrected. Jack leaned on the bench watching his son. You'd be surprised how much of life is just making sure the shelves can hold what people give you. Claire met his eyes, something warm and uneasy stirring in her chest. After a while, Jack wiped his hands and nodded toward the large sliding door at the back. Want to see the creek? Is that part of the tour? It's part of the shop, he said. We build with what we understand, and the water keeps me honest. They stepped outside. Jack walking Claire rolling into a small clearing where a wooden footbridge arched over a narrow stream. The water murmured against rocks carrying the faint scent of pine from somewhere upstream. Jack rested his hands on the railing. When my wife died, I came here every night. Didn't matter how late. The bridge didn't talk back, didn't tell me it was going to be okay. It just stayed. And sometimes that's enough. Claire looked at the worn grain under her palms. I think I've been waiting for someone to stay, she said quietly. Jack glanced at her but didn't answer right away. Staying takes work, he said finally. But some things are worth the maintenance. On the way back inside, Claire paused at a half-finished cabinet. What happens if you make a mistake? Jack picked up a chisel, ran his thumb along the edge. Depends. Some mistakes you sand out, some you patch, and some you leave because the piece wouldn't be itself without them. That's forgiving, she said. That's realistic, he replied. Perfection's a lonely place. When it was time to leave, Jack walked her to the door again. Noah shoved a small paper bag into her lap. What's this wood shavings? He said seriously. They smell like the shop, so you don't forget to come back. Claire inhaled the faint scent, warm, resinous, a little wild. I think I won't forget. Jack stood with one hand on the doorframe. You don't have to wait for Tuesday, he said. She met his eyes. I know. For a moment, the workshop hummed with something unspoken like the quiet between the last cut and the first coat of finish. Then she rolled out into the cooling air, the paper bag in her lap, and the echo of water in her ears. As the door swung shut behind her, Jack watched her go and thought, some people walk in and change the way the room feels even after they've left. And for the first time in a long while, he realized he was building something that wasn't made of wood at all. Walter Whitmore didn't slam doors. He replaced hinges. The study on the 41st floor was a cathedral of quiet power glass that made the city look obedient, books arranged like arguments already won a walnut desk broad enough to land a small plane. Walter stood in front of the windows with his jacket off and his sleeves rolled as if he intended to wrestle the skyline into good behavior. Mason Grant. His general counsel set a thin folder on the desk. You asked for a discreet check, he said. I was discreet. Walter didn't sit. He opened the folder like a surgeon opening a chest cleanly without emotion. Inside, photos of a modest workshop, bank statements dusted with red, a list of clients, local restaurants, a marina, a church with a new pulpit that looked like a ship's bow. And then, a page that stopped him for a fraction, a boy in rain boots grinning. A man with a hand on his shoulder. Both of them, spattered with sawdust, looking at the camera like it hadn't caught them. It had found them. Jack Rourke Mason said, widower, 6-year-old son. The shop has a seasonal cash flow problem. Nothing unusual for a small outfit, but he's leveraged. Walter's jaw worked. Leverage is another word for weak. In your world, Mason replied. In his, it's how you keep the lights on. Walter flipped a page. What about character? People like him? Mason said simply. The marina owner called him a man you can hand your name to. The church treasurer said, "If he says he'll show, he shows." Elena Torres, the cafe owner, said Walter closed the folder. "I'm not paying you for testimonials." "No," Mason said evenly. "You're paying me for the truth. That's the truth." Walter's gaze drifted to the photo again, the boy's hand buried in his father's. "What's he doing with my daughter?" "Talking," Mason said. "Building a shelf with the kid, drinking coffee, laughing." Walter's mouth thinned. "She won't answer my dinners, my calls, my calendar requests, but she'll laugh with a carpenter." Mason held his eyes. "I think she's laughing with herself, sir. He just didn't get in the way." Walter's hand hovered over the folder, then pulled back. "Draft a letter," he said. "From a neutral firm. Inform their largest client that partnering with a shop under investigation for workplace safety irregularities would reflect poorly. Suggest they reconsider." Mason didn't move. "Under investigation by whom?" "Anyone who frightens them." Walter said, his voice calm and terrible. "An email can be a storm if it's worded correctly." Mason chose his next words with care. "Walter, you're about to weaponize rumor. That's not a tool that hits only one target." Walter finally sat steepling his fingers like a man at prayer. "We can rebuild a shop with cash," he said. "We cannot rebuild a life if a predator breaks it." "I am protecting my daughter." Mason paused. "Or protecting yourself from what you can't fix." Walter's eyes were ice. "Do your job, Mason." Mason nodded once. "I'll write the letter." He turned to go, then added quietly, "I met Claire when she was 10. She offered me a lemon drop and told me my tie made me look serious but kind. She doesn't need a moat. She needs a bridge. Good lawyers don't preach," Walter said. "Good fathers listen," Mason said, and closed the door softly behind him. Across town, Jack was measuring twice. The chain store buyer, a man named Bowers with neat hair and a watch that shouted, walked the length of the long counter Jack had mocked up in tape on the shop floor. "We like your concept," Bowers said. "We've been wanting to go authentic for our new waterfront flagship. Instagram likes wood. Makes people feel like they're buying humanity with their coffee." Jack grinned. "Wood has better manners than Instagram." Bowers laughed because it seemed expected. He snapped photos. "Timeline's aggressive," he warned. 4 weeks. "Can you meet it?" Jack glanced at the calendar pinned above the drill press. The next 6 squares were already full of names. Arrows, delivery windows. He thought of payroll insurance, Noah's winter boots that suddenly fit like a memory. "We'll meet it," he said. "We don't miss." "Good," Bowers said. "Legal, we'll send paperwork. Try not to bleed on it." They shook hands. After Bowers left, Jack leaned against the bench, let out the breath he'd held since the call came. He could see it, the way the grain would run, the way the light would land on the curve at 4 in the afternoon, the way people would put their elbows down and tell secrets without realizing Wood listens. Noah barreled in from the back with a box of paint sticks like trophies. "Did we win? We got a big job," Jack said. "Might have to cancel Wednesday pancakes for a while." Noah pretended to swoon. "We suffer for the art." Jack ruffled his hair. "We eat on Saturday." The email arrived at 3:17 p.m. It came from a law firm Jack had never heard of with a subject line built like a siren. "Due diligence concern. Immediate attention required." He read it twice. He read it a third time. The words were clean. They didn't accuse. They suggested recent chatter whispers of a safety complaint not from an official source, of course, not merely prudent to pause. He knew how this worked. You didn't need to prove a crack. You just had to draw an arrow toward the foundation and say, "Listen." By 4:02 p.m., Bowers had forwarded the email with a corporate sigh baked in, "We must hit pause while we clarify." You understand. By 4:07 p.m., 2 smaller jobs called and asked nicely apologetically if they might push to spring, just to be prudent. By 4:30 p.m., the shop was too quiet. Quiet like no tools, not like contemplation. Noah looked up from his dinosaurs. "Bad news. Fog," Jack said. "Corporate fog. We'll wait for the wind to change." Noah thought about this seriously. "Do we need bigger fans?" Maybe just steadier hearts, Jack said. He hit send on an email to Bowers with an offer to walk the site and invite their safety consultant to the shop. He attached OSHA inspection receipts, photos, whatever truth could carry. Then, he called the two smaller clients and told them without pleading that the most reliable thing in the building would be the counters when they were finished. He used his voice like a hammer measured even driving what mattered home. He hung up. He breathed. He set the planer back on the bench because rage and power tools are a marriage that never lasts. When the bell over the shop door jingled, he thought it might be Bowers back to shake a hand and say sorry in person. It was not. Elena stepped in with wind in her scarf and a box under her arm. "I brought cookies," she announced. "For the kind of day cookies don't fix but are a good start." Jack smiled despite the wait. "You bring the Old Testament and the cookies. Proverbs and sugar," she said. "That's a balanced diet." She took one look at his face. "Who pulled a cloud over your son?" "An email," he said, and told her. He didn't say the part about the ache that arrived with the pause, the particular ache that felt like a hand had reached into his life and rearranged it without asking. Elena's mouth set. "Fog is a tactic," she said. "Cowards love fog." "Or fathers," Jack said before he could catch it. Lena's eyes softened. She said, "So, the storm has a name." I don't know that he said, but he knew. He knew the way a carpenter knows when a board is going to warp months from now, not by magic, by muscle memory. "Doesn't matter, we'll hold the line." Noah, mouth full of cookie, asked, "Can fog be good?" "If it makes you move slow," Elena said. "Slow saves lives." Jack kissed the top of his son's head. "We're going to be okay," he said, and meant it because saying it was the first nail. At dusk, Claire sat in her mother's old reading chair with the city a constellation beneath her. The intercom pinged again. 1 minute, her father said. He didn't ask. She rolled into his study. Walter didn't look up from his laptop until she stopped directly across from him, and the hum of her chair made a counter-argument that even his money couldn't ignore. "You're late," he said. "I didn't agree to the meeting," she replied. He shut the laptop gently, which was worse than slamming it. "You are my responsibility," he said, "and you are behaving irresponsibly." She laughed, small and sharp. "I had soup with a child." "With a man who sees the cracks and aims for them," Walter said. He gestured to the folder on his desk. "He has leveraged Claire. He will take what he can. That's not judgment. That's physics. Physics has rules," she said. "This is fear." Walter stood. "Fear is not your enemy. Naivete is." Claire's hands tightened on the rims. "Naivete is treating me like a problem to be solved instead of a person to be met." She nodded toward the folder. "There's a child in there. Did your due diligence mention that he sings off-key and saves birthday candles like he's punching the clock of heaven?" Walter's mouth thinned into something almost pain. "I lost your mother," he said, and the words came out like a leak he'd spent years sealing. "I will not lose you. You're losing me," she said, not unkindly, "one good decision at a time." He moved to the window like a man going to the altar for the wrong reason. Below the city provided evidence that he was right about most things. "I sent a letter," he said, as if confessing a sin you're proud of, to a client of his. "I suggested they reconsider." Claire felt the floor tilt, though the chair didn't move. "You hurt his work." "I protected you," he said with the righteous certainty of a general. She shook her head slowly. "No. You punished a stranger because you are terrified of your own daughter's heart." He turned, eyes sparking. "Your heart has been unreliable. It's beating right now," she said. "For the first time in years, it's beating for more than survival." Walter stepped closer. "He will use you." Claire's voice was suddenly steady the way the sea can be steady when the wind remembers respect. "I am not made of glass," she said. "I am made of bone. Bone breaks and men stronger." They stood inside a silence that had waited 4 years to speak. Walter lifted a hand. He didn't touch her. "You are my only child," he said. "I cannot." He closed his eyes and opened them on resolve. "If you continue this, I will remove the temptation. He will not have clients to court. He will learn to leave you alone." Claire thought of Noah's sticker in her wallet, the dinosaur slightly crooked and completely sure of itself. She thought of a bridge over a winter creek and a man who said, "Staying takes work." Something inside her, something tired of held breath, shifted. "You don't build a bridge by flooding the river, Dad," she said. "You just drown both banks." Walter's face was the face he wore at investor calls, the one that had never lost a vote. "I'm calling this mercy," he said, "because I intend to stop before it becomes cruelty." Claire's eyes stung not with tears, but with a clarity that hurt the way truth hurts. "You intend to control," she said, "because you don't know how to love." He flinched, a small movement for a large man. "Do what you think you must," she said, and turned her chair, "but don't do it in my name." When she reached the door, Walter said softly, almost to himself, "You used to trust me." She paused. "No," she said, not cruel, not even angry. "I used to be afraid of not trusting you." She left him and his skyline. In the hallway, she pulled out her phone. Jack's name wasn't there, not officially, but the workshop's number was scrawled on a card she could trace with her thumb. Her thumb hovered. She didn't call, not yet. The crack in the foundation had arrived. You didn't fix a crack by pretending it wasn't there. You studied it. You listened. You decided what to sand, what to patch, what to leave, because it had become part of the shape. Behind her, in a room full of hinges that never squeaked, a father planned an ultimatum. Ahead of her, in a shop that smelled like cedar and stubborn hope, a man recalculated deadlines and told a 6-year-old the sky hadn't fallen, it had only practiced. The storm was changing names. And storms, Claire had learned, always do their most honest work on whatever is not fixed to something true. The email came late, but the phone call came early. Jack was in the workshop by 7, coffee gone lukewarm on the bench, the planer half-tuned. The voice on the other end was Bowers, the corporate buyer, sounding as if he'd already decided the conversation was over before it began. "We're withdrawing," Bowers said. "Too much uncertainty." "I sent you every document you asked for, Jack," replied voice calm but firm. Bowers sighed. "Jack, I'm not saying it's you, but we can't have our flagship counter wrapped in rumors. It's easier to pick another builder than to fight smoke." Jack swallowed the retort that wanted to burn its way out. "Understood," he said, "but you'll get the counter you deserve." After he hung up, the silence was heavier than the cedar beams stacked by the wall. Noah padded in from the kitchen corner they'd turned into a play space. Bad call. Jack forced a smile. Just someone deciding they don't want what we make. Noah frowned. "Then we make something better. For someone else." Jack ruffled his hair. "That's the spirit." But inside he knew it wasn't that simple. Across the city, Claire sat in her father's study. It was a room built to intimidate dark-paneled walls, shelves full of first editions, a view that reduced people to specks. Walter Whitmore stood by the window, hands clasped behind his back like a general about to issue orders. "You've been spending time with this carpenter," he said. It wasn't a question. "I have," Claire answered, matching his tone, not his posture. "He's beneath you," Walter said. "Not in worth as a human being." "Yes, in worth as a human being," Claire cut in. "That's exactly what you mean when you start with not in worth as a human being." Walter turned eyes cold steel. "He will cost you more than you can afford. Your name, your dignity, your safety. My name is mine." "My dignity is mine," she said quietly. He stepped closer. "Claire, I've already ensured his biggest contract fell through. If you don't cut ties with him, I will finish the job. No clients, no orders. I will make it impossible for him to work in this city." Her breath caught. "You'd ruin a man's life because you're afraid of my choices. I'd ruin a man's life," Walter said evenly. "To save yours." Claire leaned back in her chair. "This isn't saving. This is caging, and I've spent enough time behind your bars." Walter's jaw tightened. "You're not thinking clearly." "No," she said, eyes locked on his. "I'm thinking for myself." That night, Claire typed out a message on her phone. "Jack, I can't see you anymore. Please don't contact me." "I'm sorry." Her thumb hovered, her chest ached. She pressed send. Jack read it twice, then a third time. Noah was at the table coloring. "Who's it from?" he asked without looking up. Jack slipped the phone into his pocket. "Someone who won't be coming by anymore." The boy looked up sharp for his age. Miss Claire. Jack didn't answer, but that was answer enough. She smiled different when she saw us. Noah said, voice small. "Real smiles. You don't get many of those." Jack reached over, squeezed his son's shoulder. "Sometimes people have to go. It's not always because of you." Noah frowned. "Then why does it feel like it is?" Jack didn't have an answer that wouldn't hurt more. "Come on," he said. "Let's clean up." 3 days passed. The workshop was quiet except for the whir of tools and the scratch of pencils on wood. Noah was quieter too, his questions fewer, his laughter hesitant as if waiting for permission. On the 4th day he stood in the doorway, jacket-zipped hair sticking out at odd angles. "Can we go see her?" Jack didn't look up from the plank he was sanding. "She asked us not to." "She didn't ask me," Noah said, "and maybe she's waiting for us to try." Jack set the sander down. "Why? Because the boy said you taught me that family doesn't just leave because it's easier, and she feels like family." Jack closed his eyes for a moment, then nodded. "Get in the truck." The Whitmore estate rose out of the fog like something from a different century. Iron gates, manicured hedges, a driveway that could double as a runway. Jack pulled over near the entrance. Noah slipped out boots crunching on the gravel and pressed his small face between the bars. "Miss Claire," he called. "Miss Claire, we miss you. Please come back." His voice carried on the cold air. Jack stood behind him, one hand on the boy's shoulder, scanning the windows for movement. Inside, Claire froze at the sound. She was in her room, sketching designs she'd never build when the words floated up to her raw, unpolished, impossible to ignore. Maria, the housekeeper, stepped into the doorway. "Mija," she said softly. Claire's hands tightened on the wheels. "I need to go." Maria nodded, once opened the back door. "Be happy," she whispered. Claire wheeled herself out into the chill down the service path through the gate's smaller side door. Noah ran to her first arms, wrapping around her without hesitation. "I told Daddy you loved us," he said into her coat. "I knew I was right." Jack was still. His eyes searched hers. "What are you doing here? I'm choosing," she said simply. "For the first time in 4 years I'm choosing. I choose you. I choose Noah. I choose us." "Claire," his voice was rough. "Your father—" "Let him try," she said. "I've already lost the use of my legs. I won't lose my heart too." Jack exhaled a sound that was almost a laugh, almost a prayer. "Then let's go before the gate closes again." As they walked back to the truck, Claire felt lighter than she had in years. Not because the fight was over, but because she'd finally picked her side. Behind them, the mansion loomed its windows reflecting the gray sky. But ahead, there was open road, and in the cab of the truck there was warmth. And, for the first time in a long while, Claire believed that warmth could be something you keep if you're willing to fight for it. The message was 12 words long and felt like a closing door. "Jack, I can't see you anymore. Please don't contact me, I'm sorry." He read it once, standing at the workbench again with the phone lying flat as if the distance might change the meaning, and a third time with his thumb hovering over the reply and finding no sentence that didn't sound like begging. In the corner, Noah's stegosaurus wore a crown of orange crayon. "Is that from Miss Claire?" he asked without looking up. Jack slid the phone into his pocket like it was something sharp. "We won't see her for a while," he said, careful and even. "She asked for space." Noah's crayon paused mid-spike. "Did we do something wrong?" Jack found the small stool and sat so they were eye level. "Sometimes grown-ups are fighting storms you can't see," he said. "It isn't about you. It isn't even about me." Noah stared at the drawing for a long breath. Then he pressed harder than the paper wanted, and the crayon snapped. "I don't like storms," he muttered. "Me neither," Jack said, and pulled his son into a quiet, anchor-heavy hug. At the penthouse, Claire set her phone face down and felt the silence insist on itself. Maria knocked once and entered with a tray tea toast, the lemon marmalade that tried too hard to taste like sunshine. "You look like someone who swallowed a key," Maria said, setting the tray on the low table, "and the door is still locked." Claire tried for a smile. "I made a decision." Maria poured the tea, let it steep like a thought you don't rush. "Or a decision was made for you, and you typed it." "You sound like Elena," Claire said, surprised and a little relieved that the name still opened something warm in her chest. "Smart women often agree," Maria said. "Drink. You'll think better standing on 2 feet." She stopped wincing at the reflex on your feet. "On your ground." "It's okay," Claire murmured. "I miss saying it too." Maria's hand found Claire's shoulder, a pressure that said, "You are not fragile, you are held." "Sometimes love requires a detour," Maria said softly. "But detours are how you see the good trees." Claire looked out at the glass lake of the bay. "This doesn't feel like a detour. It feels like a detainment." Maria didn't argue. She added an extra spoon of lemon to the tea and left without teaching which was its own kind of lesson. Across the study, Walter's voice was a distant metronome on a conference call. Words like acquisition and synergy and execute moved around like furniture. He didn't knock when he finished. He stood in Claire's doorway and announced a victory no one asked for. "It's done," he said. "His largest contract is gone. The smaller ones, too. He'll turn away on his own." Claire's hands tightened on the mug until the ceramic needed heat into her palms. "You didn't stop at mercy." Then she said, "You liked the way it felt." Walter's face didn't move. "I did what needed doing." "No," she said. "You did what you know how to do." He left with a mutter about a 4 p.m. with Zurich, and the room became very large. Claire took a slow breath and opened her notebook. She wrote one line, "Water doesn't judge the shape of you," and let the sentence sit like a candle. At the workshop, the day rearranged itself into the kind of busy that tries to outrun pain. Jack sharpened chisels that didn't need sharpening. He stacked offcuts by color. He wrote an inventory of screws. Elena let herself in at noon with a paper bag that lied about being only sandwiches. "House call," she said, and set out roast beef, a mason jar of pickled carrots, and 2 oatmeal cookies that looked like they could stop a crying jag. "Eat, or I will feed you like a bird, and then you will never live it down." Jack took the sandwich. She texted, he said, because Elena had already read the shape of the room and the way his shoulders carried it. Elena made a small sound that wasn't pity, the short, sharp kind. He nodded, cut clean. "Sharp can be sterile," Elena said, "but it still hurts." Noah peeked around the drill press. "Miss Elena." "Yes, Captain. Why do people say goodbye if they don't want to?" Elena leaned on the workbench as if it were a bar at closing. "Sometimes they're trying to keep someone else safe." Noah blinked. "From what? From a person who forgot how to love without owning," Elena said, and her eyes were kind but clear. "From a storm with a suit on." Noah considered this, then wandered back to his drawing. A minute later, the paper ripped. He stared at the torn-edged cheeks flushing with fury he didn't understand. Then, he carefully tore the page into 2 jagged halves and marched to the trash. At the last second, he kept one piece the rocket candle he'd drawn for Claire and folded it into his pocket. Jack watched and lifted a hand to his mouth because fatherhood is the art of holding your own pain still while your child learns the shape of theirs. "Tuesday, he'll ask to go," Elena said quietly. "Don't make him wait a week." "I promised her," Jack said. "We'd honor the ask." Elena's mouth softened, then pressed thin. "You can honor the ask and still show up at the gate," she said. "He needs to learn that love doesn't hide just because it's told to go stand in the corner. He also needs to learn we don't force doors. There's a line." "I don't want to teach him to push," Jack said. "Teach him to stand," Elena said. "Pushers break things. Standers hold them together." That evening, Maria found Claire in the library with the lights off. "Your father is asking if you'll join dinner," she said, and then because she'd helped raise this girl and knew when not to be neutral, you don't have to say yes to everything you don't want. Claire smiled in the dark. "Funny. That's what the storm told me." Maria pursed her lips. "Storms are blunt. I prefer polite weather." She hesitated at the threshold. They were at the gate this afternoon, she said gently. Claire's whole body went still. Who? The boy Maria said. And his father. The boy called for you like calling could change a city's mind. She stepped closer. I didn't fetch you. I didn't want to make a war on the driveway. Claire's fingers found the armrest. Thank you, she whispered, and it sounded like I'm not ready and also like I want to be. Maria nodded and left her in the moon quiet. Claire stared at the window until the glass stopped being a mirror and became a night again. On her lap, her hands lay open like small boats waiting for names. She pulled her phone from the pocket of her sweater and typed 2 words she wouldn't send. I'm sorry. She deleted them and typed, Wait for me. She deleted that too. Finally, she typed nothing and slid the phone away because some silences are necessary. Bridges, you build them, then you cross when your feet remember how. On Wednesday, the workshop felt off balance like a table with one short leg. Jack pulled the maple slab that was supposed to be a counter and turned it into 4 small tables because stubbornness is a tool and so is surrender. Noah used a rubber mallet to help the glue-ups set and announced that he was assisting gravity. Around 3, the door chimed and Mason Grant stepped in wearing a suit that didn't belong in sawdust but somehow respected it. He removed his glasses and cleaned them with the caution of a man choosing his words. Mr. Rourke, he said, I'm Mason. I represent Whitmore Holdings. Jack wiped his hands. You're the weather pattern. I'm one of its clouds, Mason said. I'm also a human being, which complicates employment. Jack let out a breath through his nose. You here to deliver more fog? I came to say something off the record, Mason replied. And to say it like a person, not a letterhead. He glanced at Noah, who was watching with wide courtroom eyes. May we talk somewhere? He doesn't have to listen? No, Jack said. He hears what happens to us. We don't hide storms. Mason nodded like a man who expected as much and admired it. Your shop was targeted, he said plainly. Not because of anything you did wrong. Because someone believes control and love are synonyms. Jack's mouth twitched. They're not. I know, Mason said. I told him that and kept my job by writing the kind of letters I don't let my mother read. He will escalate. He will call it protection. I am telling you so you can brace without breaking. Jack leaned on the bench. Why, tell me at all. Because I have to sleep, Mason said, and because your son is learning how men behave from the men he sees. He took out a card, not his firm's plain, with his personal number. If you need a translator, he said, or a witness, he looked at Noah. For the record, young man, fog lifts. Noah considered him. Do you like dinosaurs? I like that they tried, Mason said, mouth quirking, even when the sky got weird. After he left, Noah asked, was he a good guy? Jack watched the door ease shut. He's trying, he said. Trying counts. That night, Claire placed the paper bag Noah's wood shavings on her desk and opened it. The smell rose warm, and immediate heat and trees and sunlight saved for later. She closed her eyes and saw the shop screws in jars like constellations, a bridge over a winter creek, a hand that didn't flinch. She took out the dinosaur sticker from her wallet and set it beside the bag. It was slightly crooked. It was completely sure of itself. When the intercom buzzed, Walter asking if she'd like to weigh in on the philanthropy gala theme, she pressed her finger to the button and said, No, Dad. Not tonight. Tomorrow, then, he said crisp. Tomorrow, maybe, she replied, and she smiled because maybe is the stubborn cousin of yes. She wheeled to the window and practiced breathing like the old days in for 3, hold for 1, out for 3. Not fighting the water, letting it hold her. Across town, a boy folded a torn half-drawing into a square and tucked it under his pillow, a rocket candle flame permanent as a promise. He whispered into the quilt, she'll come back, and decided he would help the sky remember. Next Tuesday wasn't far, but Noah wasn't waiting for the calendar. He was learning with the fierce impatience of 6 that love shows up even when it's told not to knock. Dad, he called into the small apartment. Can we go somewhere tomorrow? Where Jack asked from the doorway, rubbing the back of his neck like the day had sat there all afternoon. To that big fence, Noah said, eyes bright and brave. I want to tell it. We're not scared of it. Jack looked at him a long moment, saw the very old courage living in a very small body, and nodded. "We won't push," he said. "We'll stand." Standing, stronger than pushing, Noah declared. "That's right," Jack said. "It holds the world together." Outside, the wind shifted. Somewhere on the bay, a line of fog began to loosen its grip. The city didn't notice. But in 2 rooms, one high and guarded, one small and honest, people did. And the story, having been forced to whisper, prepared its voice for the next chapter. The iron gate of the Whitmore estate wasn't just tall, it was deliberate. Each bar thick enough to outlast storms, each lock older than the boy standing in front of it. Noah pressed his palms against the cold metal and tilted his head back, staring up like he was measuring it. Jack stood a few paces behind, hands in the pockets of his worn jacket. "She's in there," Noah said. It wasn't a question. Maybe Jack replied. Or maybe she's out. Either way, we don't bang on gates we didn't build. "I'm not gonna bang," Noah said. "I'm just gonna call." Jack opened his mouth to say something else, something about respect, about not making a scene, but Noah had already cupped his hands to his mouth and shouted, "Claire." The name shot over the driveway and into the manicured silence. Somewhere a bird startled. Jack closed his eyes and let the sound be what it was, raw, hopeful, unpolished. No response. Not from the windows. Not from the wide double doors set far back. Noah tried again, louder this time. "Claire." "It's me. We're not scared of the fence." Jack half laughed despite himself. "That's not exactly subtle, buddy." "It's not supposed to be," Noah said, lowering his hands. His voice dropped suddenly softer. "She might think we forgot." Before Jack could answer, the smaller gate to the side clicked. Elena stepped out from the service path, her hair tucked under a beanie, carrying a canvas tote that looked too heavy for its size. "Well," she said, taking them both in. "This is a picture I'll keep." Elena, Jack greeted, nodding. "We're just standing," she finished for him. "Yeah, I got the memo. And for the record, standing is underrated." She glanced at Noah. "You've grown since I last saw you." "I'm trying," he said seriously. "Do you know if she's home?" Elena's eyes softened. "She is, but her world right now is crowded. Some of it is her choice, some of it isn't." "Can you tell her we came?" Noah asked. Elena hesitated. "I can. But let me be honest, if I do, she'll know you're here, but she might not come down. And that might hurt worse than waiting." Jack caught Noah's glance. "We can take that chance," he said quietly. Before Elena could respond, a voice cut in from behind her. "Is there a problem?" Maria, the housekeeper, stepped into view. Her frame straight as the gate itself. She took in Jack then, Noah, then Elena. "Mr. Whitmore wouldn't like Elena invited me to speak," Noah interrupted, the words tumbling over themselves. "I'm not here for him, I'm here for Claire." Maria's expression shifted just slightly, but enough that Jack noticed. "Claire is occupied," she said, "and the last thing she needs is more pressure." Noah's hands tightened on the bars. "I'm not pressure, I'm a reminder." The line landed between them. Elena smiled faintly, like she'd just heard a truth too rare to ignore. Maria studied the boy, then looked past him at Jack. "You understand, she said that being here might make things harder for her." Jack met her gaze. "Maybe, but sometimes it's harder to think you were left behind." A long silence. Then Maria exhaled. "I'll tell her," she said finally, "but I'm not making promises." "That's all we ask," Jack replied. Maria disappeared back through the service path. Elena leaned against the fence. "You know, she said you two are probably the first people who've stood here without demanding something from this family." "We're not here to take," Jack said. "Exactly." She smiled wryly. "And that's why it matters." They waited. 5 minutes, then 10. Noah kept his eyes fixed on the big house. A shadow crossed one of the upstairs windows, too quick to read. Finally, Maria returned alone. She didn't speak at first, just handed Noah something, a small paper crane folded from cream stationery. "She said she's not ready," Maria told Jack, "but she asked me to give him this." Noah's fingers closed around the crane like it was a living thing. He didn't unfold it. "'Kay," he said. voice tight but steady. Maria looked at Jack. "That's more than most people get from inside these walls." Jack nodded once. "Thank you." As they turned to leave, Noah glanced back. "Can you tell her one thing?" he asked Maria. "What's that? That I'm still standing?" Maria's lips curved just barely, and she inclined her head. "I will." The walk back to the truck was quiet. Jack didn't try to fill it. When they reached the cab, Noah finally spoke. "She didn't come, but she sent something. Sometimes Jack said starting the engine, that's her way of coming." Noah unfolded the crane as the truck rumbled to life. Inside, in Claire's handwriting, were 4 words. "Hold fast. I'm trying." Noah smiled a little crooked. "See, she's still in there." Jack's throat tightened. "Yeah," he said. "She is." They drove off, the iron gate receding in the mirror but not closing in Noah's mind. The paper crane sat in his lapwing, slightly bent from his grip, carrying more weight than any bird should, and still refusing to fall. Upstairs, behind a half-drawn curtain, Claire watched the truck disappear. Her hand was still warm from folding the crane. She could feel the echo of Noah's voice on the gate, sharp and certain. Maria closed the door gently behind her. They stood, she said simply. Claire kept her eyes on the road long after it was empty. "Then so will I," she whispered. Somewhere beyond the estate walls the wind shifted, and the bridge, though still unfinished, gained another plank. The day began pretending to be ordinary. That was its first lie. At Harbor Light, Elena wiped the chalkboard clean and wrote the soup of the day with a flourish tomato basil. Courage optional. Out at the harbor, Gulls argued about nothing in particular. In the workshop, Jack planed a maple edge until the curl of wood fell in perfect ribbons, and the air smelled like a promise kept. At noon, the bell over the shop door rang. It wasn't a customer. Claire rolled in hair, wind-tossed cheeks, bright with the kind of fear that looks suspiciously like resolve. The small paper crane Noah kept in his jacket pocket rode in her lap, its wings a little frayed the way love looks after it's done some living. Noah sprinted from the back. "You came!" Claire laughed, unsteady, honest. "I said I would try." She looked at Jack. "I'm done trying. I'm choosing." The room held its breath. Jack set the plane down. "Say it out loud," he said softly. "Say it so the room remembers." Claire swallowed. "I choose us," she said, and the words stopped being theoretical. "I choose your kitchen table government. I choose Tuesday soup and the smell of sanded maple and the way Noah tells the truth like it's a sport. I choose you, Jack." Noah whooped. Jack's mouth quirked, but his eyes were wet. "Then we'll build from that," he said. "That's a good beam." The bell rang again. This time, it didn't sound like weather. Walter Whitmore stepped in with the winter behind him. Mason followed, face unreadable hands in the pockets of a suit that tried not to take up more space than a conscience should. For a heartbeat, no one moved. The shop seemed suddenly too honest for the man who had built a life on polish. Walter's gaze swept the room. The tools, the work, the small boy standing like a sentry. The woman in the chair whose spine looked like a decision. He fixed on Claire. "You should have told me you were coming here," he said, voice even as a scalpel. "I did," Claire said. "I told you with silence. It was the only language you weren't translating into fear." Walter stepped closer, ignoring Jack entirely. "We will talk at home." "No," Claire answered. "We'll talk where truths don't echo." Jack didn't move from where he stood. He didn't square his shoulders. He didn't need to. He simply existed in the space between them, the way a beam exists, quietly preventing collapse. Walter finally looked at him. "Mr. Rourke," he said, folding the name into something small. "I tried to spare you the humiliation of learning the difference between fantasy and reality. You refused the favor." Jack's voice was calm, level as a perfectly set shelf. "Reality is a boy who needs breakfast, a shop that makes things that don't lie, and a woman who isn't furniture." He nodded toward Claire. "She belongs where she's seen." Walter's eyes flashed. "She belongs where she is safe." "Safety without dignity is a very pretty prison," Claire said. "I've done that sentence." Mason cleared his throat. "If I may," he said, and Walter's jaw tightened because he hadn't given permission. Mason took off his glasses, rubbed them, put them back on. He addressed Walter, but his voice was for the room. "Mr. Whitmore, you hired me to speak in terms that make investors comfortable. I'm going to try something novel. I'm going to speak the human parts." He turned slightly to Claire. "He is afraid," Mason said. "It doesn't excuse what he's done. It explains the angle of it." Walter's mouth thinned. "Explain what you were hired to do last week," he said coolly. "Since we're experimenting with candor." Mason nodded once as if he'd been waiting for the order that would absolve him of secrecy. "I drafted letters," he said. "To clients Mr. Rourke had not yet lost. I suggested the smoke of a fire I knew didn't exist." Elena, who had slipped in and now leaned in the doorway like a verdict, let out a low whistle. "Fog with a letterhead," she said. "Classy." Mason kept going. "I also shredded a memo you didn't see," he said to Walter. "It was a draft authorization for a private investigator to plant an anonymous OSHA complaint. I refused. You didn't notice because men like me are useful when we quietly decide which sins would damn you." Walter's face didn't change. "And now you grandstand," he said. "To win the room I already own." "You don't own this room," Elena said, and on her tongue it wasn't metaphor. "You can buy coffee here, but that's as far as your money gets." Noah edged closer to Claire. He looked up at Walter, and because bravery is often simply a child not having learned all the ways adults rationalize, he spoke. "You make her cry," he said. "That's not what daddies are supposed to do." Walter flinched as if a small hand had pushed a blade into the one seam his armor forgot to seal. He looked at Claire, really looked, and saw perhaps for the first time in 4 years a woman who had learned to breathe without his permission. "Claire," he said softer, the syllables finding a different register. "He will break you." She shook her head. "I was broken, Dad. Then I learned how to be built again. Not by you, by staying, by soup, by sawdust, by a boy who saves candles like Faith." Walter's eyes went to Jack. "If you cared for her," he said, "you would step aside. You would let her return to the life she was meant for." Jack rubbed his palm over a scar at the base of his thumb. "The life she was meant for is the one she chooses," he said. "If she chooses away from me, I'll walk her to the door and stand there until she's safe inside. If she chooses this, I'll stand as long as it takes. That's what care looks like where I'm from." Mason exhaled a sound of genuine relief, as if someone had put into words the defense he'd been searching for in a dictionary that didn't carry hope. Walter stared at him. "This is your legal counsel," he said to Claire, bitterly amused. "A poet in a suit." "I'm her witness," Mason said gently. "We all need one when we turn around on the map and go the way our feet have been trying to point." Silence settled. Outside, wind found the eaves. In the creek behind the shop, winter water kept doing its humble work, insisting on motion. Claire wheeled forward until she was close enough to see the bristle of stubble Walter had missed shaving. Her voice, when it came, wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. "Dad," she said, "I loved you when you were busy, and I love you now that you're scared. Those are not mutually exclusive verbs, but I won't trade my life for your comfort anymore." She touched the crane in her lap, then looked back at him. "This is my choice. Not against you, for me." Walter's shoulders dropped in a way that looked like a man setting down a weight he'd been carrying so long he mistook it for height. He looked suddenly painfully human. A father with nothing left but the truth he'd avoided. "I don't know how," he said, and it sounded like a confession from the pulpit he'd never stand behind. "To be your father without fixing you." "Start by staying," Claire said. "Fixing is furniture. Staying is family." The line landed. Even the tools seemed to lean in. Walter glanced at Jack, then at Noah, who met his gaze without hatred and impossibly without fear. Something reassembled in the older man's face. The angle of stubbornness remained, but a door cracked somewhere behind his eyes. "If you choose him," Walter said, and he didn't swallow the tremor, "I will not burn his house to keep you warm. I will try to learn how to stand." It wasn't an apology. It wasn't absolution. It was a first board laid across a river. Sometimes that's enough to start a bridge. Elena sniffed and ruined the solemnity on purpose. "Good," she said briskly, "because I have a back room full of chairs that need someone to fix them without giving them a complex, and I intend to pay in soup." Noah tugged at Walter's coat. The billionaire looked down like he'd never seen a small hand before. "Do you know?" Noah asked sincerely. "Curious how to make paper cranes?" Walter blinked. "No. I can teach you," Noah said. "But you have to promise not to rush the folds." Walter's mouth did something it hadn't practiced in years. It softened. "I can try." Claire's breath hitched. Jack reached out, not quite touching her hand, but close enough that the warmth traveled anyway. Mason cleared his throat again, but this time it was almost cheerful. "If we're building a new standing order," he said, "I suggest we codify a few provisions. 1, emails will not be used as weapons. 2, soup as currency is legally binding. 3, Tuesday is sacred." "Add a clause," Jack said. "Bridges have right of way," seconded, Elena said. All eyes went back to Walter. He gave the smallest of nods. "Carried," he said quietly. In the shop's hum, a new sound entered, not the whine of a blade, not the ping of a cooling nail. It was the sound of a family conceding the possibility of itself. Jack picked up the maple plank he'd been preparing for a stranger's flagship counter, the one that would never be, and set it on the sawhorses in the center of the room. "We'll need something better than words," he said. "Words are a good start, but people cross on wood." Walter stepped to the other side of the plank. He laid his hands on it as if testing a pulse. "What are we building?" he asked. "A small bridge," Jack said. "There's a creek out back that's been waiting." Mason took off his jacket and folded it over a chair. Elena rolled up her sleeves. Noah already had the mallet. Claire watched them gather and felt a quiet she hadn't known she'd been thirsting for arrive and take a seat. "My choice," she said aloud to the room, to herself, to the day that dared to pretend it was ordinary. "My bridge." And if her father heard my family in the space between those two small words, well, he didn't argue. He reached for the other end of the board and for once didn't try to be the only one holding it up. The sky that morning was the kind of pale gold that only comes after a storm, the color of something forgiven. The creek behind Jack's shop still ran high from last night's rain, chattering against the rocks like it couldn't keep its own joy contained. Jack was already outside, sleeves rolled up, sorting through the planks they'd salvaged from a shuttered boatyard. His hands moved with the steady patience of a man who knew that strong bridges weren't built in a hurry. Claire rolled her chair across the damp grass, following the sound of the creek. She stopped a few feet away, watching him measure twice before marking a cut. "You've been up since dawn," she said. He glanced over his shoulder with a small smile. "Bridges don't build themselves." Walter's voice came from behind her, a little rougher than usual. "Neither do fathers." Claire turned. He stood there in a wool coat collar, up his hair touched by the wind. Beside him was Noah, carrying a box of nails almost too big for him, and Mason, looking slightly out of place in boots that had definitely never met mud before. Jack straightened, wiping his hands on a rag. "Morning," he said, his tone neutral but not cold. Walter stepped closer to the plank laid across the sawhorses. "You really meant it yesterday," he said quietly. "I don't say things I can't put my hands to," Jack replied. There was a pause, the kind that could go either way, toward fracture or toward mending. Then Noah broke it in the way only a child could. "Grandpa," he said matter-of-factly, "you can hold the hammer, but I get to swing it." Walter blinked. "Grandpa." Noah shrugged like it was obvious. "You're her dad. She's with us. So, you're kind of stuck with me." Something unguarded flickered in Walter's eyes. He nodded once. "Deal." Jack handed Walter a length of sandpaper. "First rule," he said, "is you smooth the edges before anyone steps on it. A sharp edge cuts more than wood." Walter took it, running his palm along the grain. "You speak like my father did," he murmured. "That's either a compliment or a warning," Jack said, and the corner of Walter's mouth twitched. Mason, standing off to the side, clapped his hands together. "All right, legal counsel reporting for duty. I've reviewed the construction site. No OSHA complaints in progress, no letters to draft. Let's build something worth keeping. Elena arrived then, balancing a tray of steaming mugs. Soup's not ready yet, but coffee is. You lot look like you're about to fix more than wood today. They worked side by side, Jack measuring and cutting, Walter sanding, Noah driving nails with careful taps, Mason holding beams steady. Claire sat nearby with a notebook in her lap, sketching the bridge as it took form. It was slow work, but there was a rhythm to it, an unspoken agreement in each exchange of tools and glances. At one point, Walter looked over at Claire. You know, he said I spent half my life thinking strength was keeping people out of the storm. And now, she asked. He smoothed the edge of a plank, considering his words. Now, I think... Maybe strength is crossing into the storm with them. Claire felt her throat tighten. Then you're learning the right trade. By midday, the frame was in place, stretching over the narrowest bend of the creek. Jack stepped back, wiping sweat from his forehead. It'll hold, he said. Not just for today, for a long time. Walter ran his hand along the rail. It's not perfect, he admitted. No bridge ever is, Jack replied, but it does the job, it gets people across. They stood together at the edge. Noah, impatient to test it, looked at Claire. Come on, he urged. First crossing's yours. Claire hesitated. The sound of the creek below the open space between the banks had stirred the old fear of falling, of being unsupported. But then Jack's hand was there steady on the wheel of her chair, and Walter was on her other side, his hand hovering just above hers, not holding, but ready. She rolled forward, the wood firm beneath her. Halfway across, she stopped and looked out over the water. The reflection showed all of them together. Different heights, different histories, one shared space. This, she said softly, is what staying looks like. Walter glanced down at the water, then back at her, and this is what choosing feels like, he answered. When they reached the far side, Elena called from the bank. All right, that's enough symbolism for one day. Lunch is ready, and they laughed, the sound mingling with the creek's current. And for the first time, Walter didn't stand apart from it. He stepped fully onto the new bridge, pausing only to look back at the span of wood they'd made together. Not bad, he said quietly. Not bad at all. Jack met his eyes. It's a start. Walter nodded, and in that moment there was no Whitmore fortune, no Rourke stubbornness, just two men agreeing without saying it that some things are worth holding up together. As they walked back toward the shop, Noah skipped ahead Mason and Elena in easy conversation behind them. Claire felt the air shift around her lighter somehow, as if the bridge they'd built outside had also taken root inside every one of them. The day that began with wood and nails ended with soup and shared silence, the kind that needed no fixing. And under the golden sky, the creek kept singing, carrying their laughter downstream like a promise. The harbor was quiet in that first blush of morning, the water catching the gold of the sunrise like a mirror that had been waiting for this exact day. Fishing boats bobbed gently, and the old wooden pier restored by Jack's careful hands led out toward the small lighthouse that had stood watch over Port Townsend for more than a century. Claire sat in her chair at the edge of the pier, looking toward the lighthouse. A gentle breeze played with the hem of her ivory dress, simple, sleeveless, and elegant, in a way that didn't try too hard. She'd chosen it because it made her feel like herself, not some version of a bride created for photographs. Behind her, soft footsteps approached. Jack, in a crisp navy suit, paused just a few feet away. He wasn't carrying flowers. He had something else in his hand, an old carpenter's pencil sharpened and worn. Not the usual wedding gift, she said, smiling over her shoulder. He held it out to her. The first pencil I used on the bridge. Thought you might want to keep it, in case you forget how we got here. She took it carefully, closing her fingers around it. I couldn't forget if I tried. From the lighthouse steps, Noah waved them over, practically vibrating with excitement in his small suit and untamed hair. Mason stood beside him in a neatly pressed blazer, a grin stretching across his face. Elena was arranging the last of the flowers, wild daisies and pale roses tied with thin rope. And a few feet away, Walter adjusted his tie with the nervousness of a man unused to ceremony, though his eyes never left his daughter. The guest list was small by design. No grand ballroom, no glittering chandeliers, just the people who had crossed storms together. As they gathered in the circle of light near the base of the lighthouse, Mason cleared his throat. "Before we begin, Jack. Claire, do you want to say something to each other?" Jack nodded, turning to face her. His voice was steady but warm, carrying just enough to be heard above the gentle rush of the tide. "I used to think love was something that came all at once like a wave that knocks you over," he said. "But you've taught me it's the kind that stays. Like the tide, quiet and constant. You don't have to look over your shoulder to make sure it's still there." Claire's eyes glistened the morning sun, catching the tears before they could fall. "And you've taught me," she replied, "that strength isn't about standing alone. It's about knowing when to let someone stand beside you and trusting they'll still be there when the storms come back." Walter cleared his throat quietly, and for a second everyone glanced at him. He took a small step forward. "I spent too long thinking my job was to protect my daughter from everything. Turns out the best thing I could do was make sure she had someone worth facing things with." "Jack," his voice wavered, "you've proved you are that someone. And for that, I'm grateful." It was perhaps the closest thing to a blessing he'd ever given. Jack inclined his head in quiet respect. Noah tugged at Mason's sleeve, whispering something. Mason chuckled and addressed the group. "Apparently, our ring bearer has decided he also wants to say something." Noah stepped forward, a tiny ring box in his hand. "When you build a bridge," he began, "you have to start on both sides. If you only start on one, you'll never meet in the middle." He looked at Claire and Jack. "You guys, you started on both." Claire let out a soft laugh that trembled at the edges. Jack crouched slightly, meeting Noah's gaze. "Guess that makes you our best little engineer." When the vows came, they were simple. No grand promises, no rehearsed poetry. Just truth. "I choose you," Jack said, "on the days it's easy, and on the days it's work. I choose you, Claire," echoed in sunlight, in rain, in every tide between. When Mason pronounced them married, there was no roar of applause, just a deep collective breath, as if every person present knew they'd just witnessed something rare. They walked together toward the end of the pier, the harbor opening before them. The lighthouse light was off. It didn't need to guide ships in daylight, but the structure itself stood as a sentinel, a reminder that even in the darkest hours there's always a point of return. Jack leaned down, murmuring so only she could hear. "You ready for the first crossing as Mrs. Rourke?" She smiled. "Lead the way." Hand in hand, they stepped onto the bridge that spanned the creek's mouth, the one they had built plank by plank with their family. Halfway across, Claire stopped. The view from here was the same as the day they'd finished it, water rushing below, sunlight dancing on the surface, but it felt different now. Walter caught up to them, Elena at his side, Noah running just ahead. Mason brought up the rear, snapping a single photograph. "This bridge," Claire said softly, "it's not just wood and nails. It's proof that people can change, that love can be chosen, that we can meet in the middle." Jack squeezed her hand. "And stay there." The rest of the walk was slow, unhurried, as though they all understood that some moments aren't meant to be rushed. When they reached the far bank, the harbor bells rang out noon. The sound rolled over the water, clear and bright. The group stood there for a while, no one quite ready to break the spell. Finally, Walter spoke. "All right," he said, his voice lighter than anyone had heard in years. "Let's get home. We've got soup to finish and a deck to sand." Noah grinned. "And maybe a new bridge to start." Claire looked at Jack, her smile full and certain. "We've got time," she said. They turned back toward the lighthouse, the bridge behind them, the open water ahead. And under that wide, forgiving sky, the family they'd built, not by blood alone but by choice, walked forward together. Because some bridges aren't just crossed, they're lived on. Every single day. And sometimes, the strongest bridges aren't made of wood or steel, but of love, forgiveness, and the courage to begin again. If this story touched your heart, take a moment, breathe it in, because maybe, just maybe, we all have a bridge to build. We'd love to hear from you. Where in the world are you listening from? What part of this story stayed with you the most? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Let's make this space a harbor of kindness and connection. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss another story that reminds you of what truly matters. From our little storytelling family to yours, thank you for being here. Your time, your heart, your presence, it means the world. Until next time, keep believing in love and healing, and in the bridges we build between each other.